Okay, dear colleagues, welcome to our intermeeting for today. The first half of the intermeeting, as you know, we have two sessions today. First, let me congratulate two members of the committee because they have birthday today. It's Raphael Glucksmann and Daniel Laccini. So have a nice birthday together with us in the committee meeting, and all the best for you. Point one of the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. If there are no objections, then the agenda is adopted. I see no objections. Then point two, it's the chair's announcement. As we have this corona pandemic, it's totally clear, aligned with the decision by the president, everybody has to wear his or her community mask and stick to the distance rules and so on. And in this context, of course, the message that we will have no plenary next week in Strasbourg. We are really a plenary here in Brussels. And even this plenary will be restricted just to the speakers, and all other members should stay at home and follow the plenary remotely. This meeting, as all our meetings, are web streamed, so welcome to the public from Lüneburg to Ljubljana, from Tallinn to Thessaloniki. We have 3 languages for interpretation. It's English, French, German, Italian, Spanish, Dutch, and Polish. And due to the interpretation, please speak slowly, not too fast, clear, so that the interpreter can do their work. And phone interventions or only audio connections will be not interpreted. Due to the limited time, we cannot hold exchange of views on all opinions. Therefore, please note that the deadline for amendments on the inter-opinion on connectivity and EU-Asia relations, the rapporteur is Mr. Kelly, is the 19th of October at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then we switch to point 3. This is the exchange of views on the elimination of custom duties on certain products. And now I switch my head from the chair to the rapporteur on this file. And dear colleagues, I think a lot of you are knowing that I'm from the north of Germany, and for the people in the north of Germany, it's really typical that they have a lot of patience. But sometimes even this typical patience of people from the north of Germany is limited. And this is now the case in the question of the United States. Normally, you see it in my report, I would say, okay, let's start de-escalation and go ahead with this lobster deal. No tariffs for US lobster for 5 years. But last Friday, dear colleagues, the US imposed new tariffs on aluminium for 18 countries and a lot of companies worldwide. And some companies in Europe are also in this list. More or less all of the import to the United States are covered by this additional tariffs. And of course, these are no dumping tariffs. And Mr. Lighthizer and Mr. Trump in Ohio made very clear that they wanted to protect their market. And to be honest, I'm not really willing to de-escalate step by step, once again and once again. And from the US side, we have only escalation. We saw it in February, where we got extra tariffs on some steel and aluminum products. And remember, the 25% on steel and the 10% on aluminum, these unilateral illegal measures are still in force since 2018. And sometimes I think we should make really a clear, give a clear answer to the United States. By the way, Canada did it. So Canada was affected also on the 10% on aluminium, and then it was lifted by the United States. And in September, Mr. Trump in Ohio announced that he will reintroduce the 10% aluminum tariffs to Canada. And specifically, our well-known friend Chrystia Freeland, the Deputy Prime Minister, made very clear that they were retailed immediately to this 10% tariffs, and they presented a list of products from the United States which would be put with tariffs on. And the United States dropped the 10%. Perhaps this is the only answer the United States and the Lighthizer administration is understanding. So, you know, we are really careful in our work. We didn't put any tariffs on Boeing aircrafts and on products coming from the United States. Even the W2 allowed us tariffs in the volume of $4 billion. We wanted to negotiate. And this piece of legislation is also a try to de-escalate. But at the same moment, we got these aluminium tariffs which really has nothing to do with dumping, really to close the US market. And therefore, dear colleagues, I'm considering to table an amendment to reject the lobster deal. Because I see no alternative to make clear that we are not willing to accept these unilateral measures coming from the United States. I'm not totally decided yet, but let's speak about that. If we really should de-escalate step by step, month by month, seeing that we are threatened by measures coming from the United States, and our industry, specifically our small and medium-sized enterprises, are suffering from that. So now I give the floor to the shadow rapporteurs, and Danuta Hübner for 2 minutes is the first.
Hello, good morning, colleagues. And Bernd, it's easy to say you have given some thoughts to this. I don't know whether you also consulted not only with your patient compatriots, but also with your political group. We probably, other colleagues, at least I am just sort of taken by surprise in the sense that I didn't know that you would propose that we have a different approach to the issue that we have been discussing, investing and also looking for arguments and trying to rationalize also for the last 2 months. So my understanding is that you are today the discussion and making statements that we would like to do for a different occasion, but now you want us to consider the opposite, so that we are not going to support the proposal of the Commission, but that we are going to reject it. I don't think that it makes much sense now to continue normally our discussion that we have somehow politically prepared to present today, but that we have basically maybe have this initial exchange without making any decision, because we also have to talk to our colleagues and we have to decide whether we will be supporting your proposal, which is very tempting, of course, because we are all sort of equally unhappy with what is happening there. But we also have this long-term agenda of de-escalating, and we have been involved in thinking, in arguing also in favor of making it step by step through small steps. And we have on the top of that the decision on the Boeing retaliation measures, So I guess the only way out of it is just to suspend this discussion and to continue it in a quickly convened additional meeting, extraordinary meeting, where we could have also the clear support from our political groups. So I refrain from giving my opinion that would be normally very positive and supportive, but in this situation I don't think I can immediately support you. I can share your doubts, but what will be the outcome of our reflection and discussion, internal discussions, it's difficult to judge now. So that will be my request to you, to give us the chance to go back to our constituencies and also our political groups to consider your proposal. Otherwise, I would strongly support that we do this de-escalating small step, because I think we have been committed to it, and we have to rethink what we do in reaction to the aluminium case separately. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the balanced statement, Danuta. And of course, we will come back to another discussion. And I just mentioning to consider such an amendment. But nevertheless, Liesje Schreinmacher, please. You have to switch on your micro.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Bernd, you caught us a little bit by surprise, I have to say, because we've been talking about this deal rather positively, and I fully agree with Danuta that it is quite tempting to take this route of not giving consent, but we also have to keep our long-term agenda in mind. This deal has been from the start economically small in itself, but we all considered it, politically speaking, a big step forward. And as Renew Europe, we believe that it could really be a stepping stone to improve our transatlantic relationship. Even though timing is somewhat awkward, this deal should not be viewed or presented in a victory for a certain president or in any way support any campaign for the White House. But I agree with Danuta that we have to do this discussion perhaps later. We have to discuss this in the coming days. If we do or do not want to support this deal, we have to go back to our groups, obviously. I think I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And one of our birthdays people now, it's Oscar Lancini. Once again, congratulations for 3 minutes.
Mi sentite?
Can you hear me? Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, indeed, you did take us a little bit by surprise. I share your ideas, but it was a step ahead that we had made in terms of solving the controversy with the United States. We had an agreement, if you like. However, we can't be just used on behalf of the President of the United States to win his election campaign. So we absolutely have to assess this situation better. Now, we've had a judgment from the World Trade Organization which allows the EU to put $4 billion worth of tariffs on. And then we have the situation with Boeing. So we do have to be constructive, it's true, and we have to try to avoid any escalation, because that might have very worrying repercussions. And I think this is, of course, all the more so in this very difficult time for our global economies. The United States have made their step forward, their progress in terms of the tariffs issue. The United States is the most important market for EU agricultural products, and any tariffs have actually caused great difficulties to our agro-food market. And obviously, we have to also take into consideration the sanctions on the Russian Federation. $5.5 billion worth of damage has been done to the European economy because of these events. So I do share what you've said. As I already said, I share your opinion about these new measures, but we have to go into them more in depth and assess the situation very carefully. Thank you once again, and thank you very much for your birthday wishes.
Thanks a lot. For the Greens, Reinhard Bütikofer for 2 minutes. Reinhard is not connected, then it's Gerd Bourgeois for 2 minutes. Switch on your microphone, Gerd.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Bernd, thank you, colleagues. As you know, I am in favor of every step forwards in de-escalation. So it was my intention to approve the report, but there are new elements. And I know that Article 2 is stipulating very clearly that there should be not an imposing of new tariffs, and every agreement should be executed in good faith. So new tariffs, while we are setting a step forward to come to de-escalation, maybe in the long term to a renewed partnership, is, in my eyes, non-acceptable. But I agree with the colleagues that who propose to postpone the decision so that we can take in consideration all the elements. It will be part of the election discussion in the United States. We have to see what are the consequences for our economy, for our enterprises. So let's take it in reconsideration and postpone it now.
Thanks a lot. And for the Guets, Luke Flanagan.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm delighted to hear the chairman's scepticism towards this deal, and maybe there might be a bit of hope that it won't go through. We're all here, as we know, because of the people who voted for us and our constituents, and we're here to represent them and what sort of impact our decisions make on them. So I have been contacted by the Irish Islands Marine Resource Organisation, and they have contacted me to reiterate their strong opposition to the deal, and they've given me a number of reasons. They say for many years they have highlighted the significant shortcomings in the common fisheries policy for small-scale fishers who have been left with little or no access to quota for the majority of species. And as a result, they are overly dependent on non-quota species such as what we're talking about here, lobster, and are extremely vulnerable to events outside their control. They also say that the peripheral coastal and island communities have a rich social and cultural fabric which cannot be replaced if lost, and that sustainability must take social considerations and impacts into account, as well as economic and environmental factors. Scale is important, they say. Small coastal communities in Europe, while numerically large, end up getting lost in the method of analysis for decisions on trade deals, which often miss factors which are not easily measured on a spreadsheet. They tell me that the removal of lobster tariffs will promote an increase in transatlantic trade with inevitable impacts on the price of locally produced lobster. You can't really argue with that. This policy, they say, flies in the face of the realities of the climate crisis, where food is transported over long distances instead of sourcing local seafood caught in a sustainable way using low-impact fishing methods. Now, they finish by saying that it's important for us and my colleagues to recognise the importance of vulnerable coastal and island communities across Europe and to protect them. I can't really find anything to argue with what their points are, particularly on climate, particularly on pitting communities against each other all over the world to produce cheap food. I hope this agreement will be voted against. I will certainly be voting against it. And I'm pleased, somewhat pleased to hear that, well, for whatever reason, maybe there's a chance that we won't vote for this and bolster Mr. Trump's campaign.
Thanks a lot. And now we have Reinhard Bütikofer with us. Reinhard, for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I had a technical problem. I have listened carefully, and I'm not convinced that we should change horses in the middle of the river crossing. I share all the frustration that has been voiced. We have been turning the other cheek several times. We have offered an olive branch. And we're frustrated because from the other side, this is not reciprocated. But I think it would be a hasty decision and not a strategically wise one if we changed course now. I would certainly expect that this would have an escalatory effect that would not be useful. I agree with the Chair that we have to draw a red line. And I have said as much in my public communication about this deal, but I would draw the red line somewhere else. I would draw the red line after the presidential election. And I would prepare to retaliate if need be, if there is no new opening. But there's a chance of starting a new game after the election, and I think we should not forgo that chance. By the way, the chance is not very bright, because as far as I have heard from the Biden camp, they have not pledged to undo the illegal tariffs on steel or aluminum. And knowledgeable people that have contacted the Biden camp have told me that they don't expect Biden to act on that, at least during his first year. So I think we might be up to a real battle, even if Biden wins. Even more so if Lighthizer continues or if Trump continues. But I think we should not forgo the important, symbolically important political point that we're making by offering this olive branch. It's much less than a stepping stone towards resolving the issues that we have, but it signals clearly that we're willing to do business. And I think in case this is not reciprocated, we have to turn tougher, but this is not the moment to do it. And I think it's completely misleading to argue that this would help the Trump campaign. I think the opposite could be argued, that if we escalate at this moment, that could help his campaign. I think his campaign is lost anyhow. He's going down in infamy. So let's not make a domestic argument from the U.S. a decisive argument for our strategic decisions.
Thanks a lot, Reinhard. And now it's Sean Kelly for 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think firstly I would like to say and emphasise that this deal is the first in relation to reduction of tariffs with the United States in this area for 20 years. And it has happened with the Trump administration in full power. And I think there is great credit due to the outgoing Commissioner, Phil Hogan, for the work he did in helping to bring that about. And obviously he utilised the close relationship that is there, particularly between Ireland and the US, for many, many years to bring that situation about. So that is a positive development which I think we should be grateful to Mr. Hogan for, and also on which we can build. And that is really what we will be hoping to do now. Build on this, not trying to escalate a situation with the United States in relation to transatlantic trade and creating tensions, because Trump or no Trump, the European Union and the United States have the largest bilateral trade and investment relationship and enjoy the most integrated economic relationship in the world. Now, I think Mr. Butikofer made an interesting point there. He's right. Let's not do anything that would either be seen to act against or might be seen to help Donald Trump. So let that take its course. And obviously, post-election, we'll be in a far better position to see what we should do. As EPP, we would not be favouring a tit-for-tat with the United States. I think that's not the way to go. It might be populist, it might sound strong, but in view of the historic relationship and the fact that we've been traditional allies for so many years and will be into the future, I think negotiation is the way to go. To say this deal was done at the most difficult time perhaps, and that would indicate that the opportunity is there to continue that into the future. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. And Pedro Silva Pereira for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I think we all know that this EU-US tariff agreement is only a mini deal with a small package of tariff reductions and the elimination of customs duties for a limited scope of sectors. It can be, and it is certainly, I think that most of us would agree, positive in itself in terms of the economic impact in some limited sectors. But we also know that this agreement is mostly important for political reasons. It was designed to provoke a step in the direction of improving bilateral trade relations, de-escalate trade tensions. This was the real reason for this agreement, in the assumption that the US would abstain from introducing new measures against the EU and continue this absurd trade war, also against the economic interests of the European Union. Now, the announcement of the Trump administration of new tariffs on aluminium imported from a number of countries, including 7 European countries, deserves a strong political response from the European Union. So we expect that from the European Commission to begin with, and we should not exclude the rejection of this agreement for these political reasons. This is something we should discuss. And in the meanwhile, the postponement of a decision on this deal would probably be the best option. Of course, we all expect that European citizens can, the American citizens can solve this problem very soon, but we have our interest to defend, and it is very important that the American administration understands that we are serious about this trade relationship, and we cannot accept illegal and absurd and this way of dealing with a partner as the European Union. So we fully support you as rapporteur and as chair of our committee in your comments, and this is something we have to continue discussing, and in the meantime, postponement of a decision will be the right move. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and Nicola Danti for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think we're all very worried about the American trade policy over the last years. We've seen escalation. We've gone from approval of the TTIP to a war on tariffs. So, Chairman, I think this was an excellent possibility for a new stage, but we're 28 days away from the vote, and the American vote, and we know that trade policy has come into the last stage of the presidential campaign, the election campaign. So I think we should pursue our de-escalation objectives and try to recover a good, stable commercial relationship with the United States. We've done a lot of work on that, and this act went in that direction. We're 28 days away from the vote, and I think, therefore, we can take our time now, quite happily, to assess the American vote, first of all, and then subsequently decide whether or not this act should go ahead or be rejected, given what has happened or will have happened in the elections on the 3rd of November. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And now I will give the floor to Rupert Schlegelmilch. He is responsible for the relation to the United States in the Commission. Rupert, Gerd Bourgeois mentioned Article 2b and Article 3 of this proposal, so that there should be a clear commitment by the United States not to introduce new measures against the European Union that undermine the objectives. And if so, this should lead to a temporary suspension. Is this in line with the measures taken against aluminium?
Thank you. Vielen Dank, Herr Vorsitzender, and thank you to all those who have spoken on this issue. Let me first say that when I saw the report, I was actually quite happy in the light of what seemed to be a smooth procedure. I now realize it's a little bit more complicated, but let me maybe come back to the two issues which have been mentioned. One of them is the anti-dumping investigation that has already been now discussed thoroughly, but also the Irish comments which on the question what happens to the market. On the anti-dumping measures by the US, and the last thing I think that is my job is to defend any anti-dumping measures by the US. But let's take a closer look also in your question, in light of your question, Chairman, or whether this is a case of Article 2. We should not forget that anti-dumping is very different than Article 232 national security measures on aluminium that the Americans have taken. Anti-dumping per se is a WTO legal procedure. Yesterday, the EU started 3 anti-dumping investigations ourselves. So we have to be a little bit careful to turn this into a purely political discussion. Of course, this investigation, which covers 18 countries and has some absurdly high anti-dumping margins, is questionable, but we still have procedural rights. We can intervene. These are provisional measures. The problem with some of the numbers, and I would like to say that most of the margins for most of the companies are relatively low, with the exception of Germany and Romania. These are results of investigations involving either companies which cooperate or companies which do not cooperate. And the methodology can be questioned. In most cases, the calculation here, when it's very high, is based on something which is called applying adverse facts available on the exporter. We will do what we have to do to sort this out, but we also have to talk to the companies and the industry involved to see whether the data which has been used, because this is where you have to defend yourself, is correct and not. But it's not the end of the story. We have our own rights and we intend to use them. So for me, coming back to your question, it's not directly obvious that a legal means as anti-dumping, even if possibly in the provisional phase being exaggerated, is per se the sort of thing we had in mind when we said if the Americans continue with 301 or 232 measures, which are in our view illegal, that we have to withdraw our support for this measure. Anti-dumping as such, as I said in the beginning, is something which is per se legal, and it's not necessarily our intention to turn this into a political discussion every time we take measures, or the Americans who actually do take measures more than we do, but some of them we couldn't even maybe object to. So I would argue we have to look a little bit closer, because this is very new, and also talk to our industry to see where they stand on this and where they see the problems and the faults in the methodology that the Americans might have used. And then use the time between now and early next year, when this might become definitive, to convince the Americans that this particular case might have gone a little bit off track, if I can say that. I would also like to add that the bigger context is very much at stake now. We are negotiating as we speak, trying to find a way out in the Airbus-Boeing conflict. I'm sure you're fully aware of that. I think we need to keep a cool head in whatever we do, how that will influence the very, very positive signals that we have sent to the Americans, trying to force them or trying to convince them that further escalation is not needed here. Here in this preliminary analysis of the anti-dumping, I personally am not convinced that we will make it easier if there now are strong signals that on something where at least you can argue it's not as illegal as, or it's not illegal per se, that we're helping ourselves to make the other discussions more conducive. But in the end, it's in your hands. I just wanted to make these first comments, and I'm just as much surprised as some of your colleagues that this is now coming up. But I also see that, of course, the political impact on these measures in particular, because they are so broad, cannot be ignored. If you allow me, Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to respond quickly to the point made on the impact on EU producers. In our first discussions, I think I already mentioned that what we will see by the tariff reductions for lobsters will be a replacement effect between Canadian and US exports. But it will not, in our view, massively harm our industry, which produces, first of all, a different product, smaller langoustine, and it will also not change the fact that we import 90% of these products. And we will not, I think, see a major shift of that. We're not going to ratchet up our production massively. We have seen that as a result of CETA and the Chinese tariffs on US lobster, but mainly on CETA, the Americans have massively lost market share because of the comparative advantage. We just expect them to claw back some of the market share that the Canadian producers took as a result of lowering the tariffs also for the Americans. But it's a product where we are very, very heavily dependent in any case on imports. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks a lot, Rupert, and I can assure you that I have a cool head and a hot heart. Thanks a lot, colleagues, for your comments. And of course, we will reflect the situation, and we will come back on the 10th of November. This will be after the elections, everybody is knowing. And then, of course, we can assess the situation as it is and find, I'm sure, a proper and reasonable result. Thanks a lot. This concludes the item 3, and we